Hello, my name is Chuck Wolf. Over the years, I've worked in many different roles, including leading my own leadership consulting company since 1994. I've worked for and with some of the best companies and universities in the world, and have had the opportunity to work with government officials, military organizations, and public and private schools. I'm a leading expert and pioneer in emotional intelligence. Since 2009, I have been a volunteer hosting a radio show I created called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. I really enjoy making a difference in people's lives. The show is on award-winning community radio station, WPKN in Bridgeport, Connecticut. In recent years, Simsbury Community Television has been sharing my shows on their station and on YouTube. My sincere hope is that everyone who watches regularly will learn how to use the Emotion Roadmap in their own lives by listening to people who call in to get help with challenges at work, home, and in communities. To learn more, go to www.emotionroadmap.com. If you have a comment or question, email me at cjwolf@cjwolf.com. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to WPKN 89.5 FM, listener-supported radio. It's nice to be on the air with you, and just want to make sure that you're all out there. All right, let's see. Okay, well, I'm listening to I'm Messiah, and we got to visit for a moment. It was really nice to see him. It's really interesting. We share studios at WPKN, but in different studios. So we haven't had a chance to talk as much as when we used to share the same studio in our former place where we used to be for a long time at the University of Bridgeport. Now we're downtown in Bridgeport and really enjoying the very modern technologies and missing some of the older. The ambiance that was with the older station a little bit. Anyway, today's show, I wanted to talk to you about a couple things that I think really relevant in today's times, the kind of things we face. But I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about what the show's about and welcome all my regular listeners to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I'm Chuck Wolf, and the show's on the first and second Wednesdays of each month. So this is the second Wednesday in May, and I'll be back again in June, the first and second Wednesdays. That's when I'm on the air at 12 noon as part of the community strip for WPKN. So that's when I'm here, and those of you that are regular listeners, sometimes I have a caller who really wants to call in. I know I had somebody who was trying to call me last week, and I'm here by myself. Nobody's taking the phones for me or screening the calls. So if I'm talking to someone and you can hear me talking to someone on the radio, you're welcome to stay on the line, on the second line we have, but I can't get to you to tell you that I can see you're calling, and I'll be with you as soon as I can. I don't want to cut anybody short. So just so you know, if you want to call and speak to me, it's always a good time when I'm talking because I'm happy to take your calls. When I'm talking with another caller, I can't really stop and take your call then. So the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. The show is about helping people understand how to deal with emotionally challenging situations. Anyone that's listened regularly knows that, and knows that when a caller calls in, I walk them through what I call the Emotion Roadmap, which is a guide to helping people navigate sort of the whitewater of our emotional lives. We have emotions everywhere all the time, and sometimes those emotions are dominant in our lives for periods of time, sometimes just for a few seconds, minutes, hours, or sometimes for weeks, months, or years. That certain emotions are dominating what we think about, how we behave, what we do, what decisions we make. A lot of times we're aware of our emotions, but often we're not. So let me just say that everybody right this moment, as you're listening to me, you're feeling something. Now, you haven't really thought about what you're feeling necessarily, unless it's a pretty strong, intense feeling, and you know you're feeling angry about something. Let's just say you're driving on the road where a lot of people listen often, and somebody cut you off or cut in front of you, and maybe you have somebody with you, and you're worried about not only yourself but your passengers. Maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's a colleague, somebody from work, a neighbor. But anyway, maybe you're feeling angry. Maybe you're feeling sad. There's a loss that happened. Maybe you're feeling bitter about something in your life where things didn't go your way. You feel like something you were hoping was going to be good news and it wasn't, and you're really upset about that. And maybe feeling bitter you're very aware of that. Or maybe you're feeling joyous. Someone just told you got the job you were hoping to get. You got a promotion. You got nominated for an award, or one of your children, family members, friends, got something very special for them in their lives, and you're very happy for them. So lots of times, again, we're feeling strong emotions that we're very aware of. But the subtle ones, the ones that are with us all the time, when we're just kind of doing what's in front of us and not really thinking about what we're feeling, we're always still feeling something. And those feelings have an impact on what we're thinking about and how we're behaving. I mean, just a real quick example is when you're driving down the road and you have a smartphone with you and it bings. It makes some noise, some alert goes off that lets you know that somebody posted a text to your phone, or somebody sent you a message through Facebook, or something on LinkedIn you've been waiting for happens, and you have this impulsive need to want to know what that was. Some people have set their phones up so that messages that come in talk to them. That's probably a lot safer than anybody that feels the need to look at their phones. I mean, we all know that looking at phones is an irrational behavior. Irrational, not rational, right? And yet, my guess is, as smart as all my listeners are, and I know that really smart people listen in the PKN, and especially smart people listen to this show. But in doing so, I also know that smart people don't always do smart things, and that even smart people make mistakes around behavioral issues like looking at your phone when you're driving. There's nothing rational about that. It's bad behavior. It's dangerous behavior. Hey, we got our first call. So let me take the call. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, this is Camden.
Hi, Camden. How you doing?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you. What can I do for you today?
Well, I'm a big fan of your show, and I really enjoy your help, and you've helped a lot of people. My issue today is something that I've been working on for a while. I'm not one to hold grudges, but I'm having a really difficult time with my girls, trying to get them to be more considerate of older family members. I've asked them repeatedly to, call their grandparents, or, and by the way, they are grown adults at this point, so I feel like I can't, I have to be careful about.
You can't send them to their room if they don't call, right?
Right, exactly. And I feel really badly, like, have I not, shown them this all their lives, and they should know better. But it's very hurtful to me, and, I don't think their grandparents judge them harshly or anything, but it's just rude. So I'm having a hard time accepting that that's how they are, and they're just limited, and they're probably not going to do this, and still finding a way to love them.
Well, I'm sure that you've thought about this a lot, and you've probably tried a number of things. So I don't want to assume that I'm going to suggest something that you haven't already thought of. But perhaps one of the things that maybe would be helpful is to think about kind of putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about why they may not make that call, and just trying to understand and empathize a bit with what's behind their lack of what you are calling consideration, and maybe that's all it is, but is there anything else that might be helpful in at least understanding why they're reluctant to do it? Does that cause you to think a little differently at all, Kim?
I have definitely thought of that and tried to be loving and forgiving and understanding of what it might be. I've even actually asked them what it is that, just to help me understand better, and I've also even asked them to do it as a favor to me, and they, like one kind of does and the other two kind of don't. So yes, I think I have tried to put myself in their shoes, which is great advice.
Well,
all the time.
What comes to mind when you think about what's going on for the other two that don't call at all, really? What do you think's happening for them? I mean, my guess is it's not that they don't love their grandparents or feel something for their grandparents, because you didn't say that. So it's more just, it looks like selfish behavior when they're not comfortable calling. Or I wonder if it's something else. Have you thought about what else it might be besides just that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are, numerous reasons why they may not be comfortable, but I think you're right. It's probably something deeper than just their relationship. One set of grandparents are step-grandparents who they just don't know very well, and the other ones weren't great grandparents to them, weren't very present. And so I think there's a feeling of, why should I do for them what wasn't done for me? But I've tried to teach them that sometimes you do things out of obligation or things that you don't want to do necessarily.
Right. So one of the things that you've tried as best you can is to communicate with them all the reasons why this is a good idea and a worthwhile behavior for them to engage in. It's appreciated by the grandparents. It's a thoughtful thing to do, and I'm sure you've said all those things many times to them, and yet you still don't get the behavior you want. So one of the things that I always think is important is, and you've listened to the show, and thank you for your kind compliments about the show. I appreciate that all the time. Really. Yeah. But one of the things that I think is really helpful sometimes, Camden, is to ask, how are you feeling about this when I ask you? So that you know where you're starting from. Because sometimes I think people feel like, hey, Mom, you're kind of nagging me to do something. I know it's the right thing. I'm busy. I've got my own life. I've got so many things going on. That's one way of thinking about it. A deeper level might be that, when I talk to them, it's uncomfortable. I don't really know what to say. It's not easy. It's not an easy conversation. If I call them, they want to know a few things, and then we're done, and it's awkward, and so I feel uncomfortable. I mean, you don't really know until you ask. I mean, you might assume, but you don't know till you ask. Hey, when I tell you to call, I know you think about it, but you haven't. At least you don't do it regularly. And I just, if you could think about why, I'd really appreciate trying to understand. So maybe I'll leave you alone if I understand that better, and I won't bother you so much about it. But it'd be helpful for me to know, because obviously I think it's an important thing to do, and I think when I talk to you about it, you even think it's important to do, but you don't do it. So, and I don't want to judge you. I just want to understand.
Yeah. Definitely, I've tried that.
Okay, what do they say?
That's why when I go, they're really angry.
They get angry when
they get angry at me. You can't control us. Our relationships are organic. We want them to be organic. You can't tell us what to do. It's disrespectful, that kind of stuff. And these are girls that I've had a really good relationship with up until this issue.
So this is something that they felt like you're... Okay, so you did ask them, and they feel like you're imposing somehow on them.
I did. Yep.
Yeah. Have you thought about asking the grandparents to call them a little more often?
Yeah, they could definitely do that. They're elderly, though, and, it's hard for them. But yes, definitely. That's one way about it. And I've also talked to the grandparents who, they're better people than I am, I guess, because they say, well, they're very busy and we understand that, and they don't know us that well. They come up with all the excuses that, I mean, they're just very understanding, but I'm not. I feel badly, it makes me embarrassed. It makes me just feel badly also for the kids, because I feel like they're missing out and they may regret it, but maybe they won't. I don't know.
So here's something for you. I think you've tried lots of things that make a lot of sense to me that haven't worked for you.
Thank you.
And you have a really nice relationship, and you're basically pretty happy with your girls, with the exception of this issue.
Yeah.
And so maybe you need to rethink the issue. As you're talking to me, I'm thinking about something that comes to mind for me. I had an uncle that just recently passed away. And he was my only uncle of all my uncles that actually called my wife and I on our birthdays and on certain holidays. And he would always call. And, one of the things that did for me was it made it easier for me to want to call him. I didn't call my other uncles. I didn't call my other aunts. But it just made it easier because he always reached out and he showed he cared. And, one of the things that's really interesting to me about, just telling you that story, Camden, is I'm thinking, I have some nieces and nephews that I would have liked to have had them call me about something that happened recently. And one of them did. The other two didn't. And I think part of that is I don't call them like my uncle used to call me. And I'm just thinking, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, you know what? I think maybe if you could arrange with either both sets of grandparents, really, not to have long calls, but just periodically on certain special days to reach out, that maybe that sets the environment for your kids. Maybe no time soon, but at a later date to feel like, you know what? I want to call them. They've been special to me. I want to call them, and maybe that's helpful.
Right. Yeah, that definitely is. They do that, and so that's why it is sort of hard to. But you're right. I mean, the phone works both ways.
Yeah, and they may feel like they're imposing on the kids' lives. And well, pick special days and just talk for a few minutes, and then say it's great to hear your voice. It's so nice to talk with you. I love you and goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. They can make short conversations for sure. So yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. Yeah. What's hard to teach a kid, I think, is to feel grateful and maybe even obligated to someone that hasn't necessarily been the best grandparent or present for them, or parent for that matter.
And I know the routine that parents and lots of people like to say, which is that be the better person. You be the better person, right? But I struggled a bit with that when I was growing up myself. This is again revealing a bit, but I remember my mother and father used to say, "Always respect your elders." And I always did respect my elders until I realized that some of them didn't respect me.
Right, and some are not very respect-worthy.
And all of a sudden I said I remember one time telling my parents, I said, you know what, I always start with respecting everybody, really, not just my elders. But sometimes over a period of time when I feel disrespected myself, I'm not going to give that, I'm not going to automatically just be respectful anymore.
That's really true, right. So I think maybe some of it, what you're talking about, is just accepting who they are as they are, and maybe giving up on this one and focusing on my own relationship with them. I'm not sure. I think
so. I think you've got a lot of wonderful things happening with your daughters, it sounds like, and this one is becoming kind of a friction point, and I'm thinking that maybe not to let it go entirely, because I think as I suggested, if you put it to you tell the story to the parents and your parents or step parents, whoever they are, that this is something that maybe at least at this point it needs to be on you to reach out a bit more. And I'd encourage you to do that because that's going to make them want to call you later. Maybe not now, but later.
Yeah.
And then I'd let it go, Camden, I think. I think that's pretty much all you can do.
I think so, too.
And feel pretty good about your efforts and trying to do the right thing and moving on.
Exactly. I think that's very smart. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for discussing it with me. I appreciate it very much.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for calling, and again, thanks for your kind words, and thanks for listening to the show. Good luck with that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
I know. Hi. I just wanted to say hello to someone else that was calling again. I know that there was another caller, and I mentioned when at the beginning of the show. Oh, here we go. Great. Thanks. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who's calling, please? Hello. Hi. I can't hear you. Could you speak up? Or?
You're on the air. Who's calling, please? Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Oh, hi, Chuck.
Hi. How you doing?
Good. Here, let me turn down the sound on my. There we go. I just wanted to add a couple of thoughts to the last caller.
Could I have the first name for you? Just something so I can.
Yeah, Phil.
Oh,
Phil.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts. I'm a physician, and there's a study that I use a lot when I'm counseling patients about things like quitting smoking and that sort of thing. And it's a study from 30 years ago, and they looked at what happens when somebody tells somebody else they encourage them to quit smoking. And the variable was who that first somebody is. And they found that if your physician takes the time to go over the pluses and minuses of continuing to smoke or stopping to smoke, that about 30% of the time the person will actually quit smoking or make a good faith effort to do that, which is actually pretty good. On the other hand, because it's seen as medical advice, they took the time to, talk with me about this. But if it's your spouse telling you, it's seen as nagging, and it doesn't do any good at all. And I think this woman is in a little bit of the same situation with her children. I would want to know if as she was bringing them up when they were, 6 and 7 and 8, did she make it a regular, just a routine that when they got a gift, a birthday gift or whatever, that they wrote a thank you note, and that may have something to do with why they're resistant now. And then finally, I wanted to see what you thought about the idea of maybe a couple of times when she knows that the grandparents have sent a gift or a birthday card or something to their child, for her to buy a thank you card and address it and stamp it, and then when she is with her children, for some reason, to kind of hand it to them and say, hey, would you mind just writing a little note on this and I'll send it for you. With the hope that if they did that a couple of times and they got some positive feedback from the grandparents, that would maybe increase the chance of them, doing it more often, making it a bit more of a habit.
Well,
that's it.
You offer a couple of interesting points, Phil, and thanks for sharing what you told us about the smoking. It's helpful to know that, particularly for anybody that's still smoking out there, and any doctors that might be listening that are hoping to encourage their patients not to. But at the same time, one of the things I found is that I think when you are in most of us are problem solvers in what we do every day in trying to address the things that are in front of us. And when we have somebody that we care about and we want to help and they have a problem they present to us, we want to tell them what we think might be helpful, which is a couple of things that you just suggested. I think what I've found happens, and this comes from years of being a therapist, is that if you suggest things, it's often things that they've already thought about. And then there might be some things that they've thought about and dismissed. And then they might feel like they want to argue with you. No, that's not a very good idea. And then you feel like you have to defend your idea, and it's counterproductive. So one of the
Yeah.
things that I found that's really helpful to people is first to ask, what have you tried? And then what are you, and then possibly to offer some things. Usually I ask for permission, but Camden was asking me already for some help, so I didn't do that step. But when I'm doing it with somebody else that didn't ask me or call me because I got a show that I'm doing to help people, but I just happen to be with somebody that I care about and they've got something going on, I'll ask, are you okay with me offering a suggestion? But first I ask kind of like, what have you already tried? So she did a lot of the right things, I felt. I could see pretty quickly that she's been thinking about this a long time, has a great relationship with her daughters. I think this is spoiling the relationship a little bit for her. And also, I think, maybe it's more on the grandparents, is the story I told. It's more about maybe you reach out a bit and then the kids want to call you instead of just telling the kids. If the kids want to call, they'll call. If you kind of make them call, it feels like, it does feel like nagging. You're right. It feels like it's just like, I'm doing this for Mom. I'm not really doing this because I want to talk to you. And then it gets even more awkward on the actual call itself. So I mean, you might get the behavior accomplished, but it doesn't achieve what you're trying to get, what you're hoping for, which is, a more respectful, appreciative, valued kind of relationship between these people that you love. You love them all, and you want them just to love each other and spend a little more time thinking about each other. But I think if the grandparents make the calls like my uncle did, the way I was telling that story, I think for me, I felt bad if I didn't call my uncle on certain days, because he had reached out to me. And it reminded me, Phil, honestly, that there's some when I go home, I'm going to call a couple of my niece and a nephew that I just want to say hello to. I haven't talked to in a long time. And instead of waiting for them to call me, rather than wait for that, I want to make that call myself.
Yeah. And I think there's an art to making those calls. With some people, I'm sure you have old friends that you haven't talked to in a long time, and you could call them and have like an hour-long conversation and only end it because one of you had to do something. And then there's times when you call to say hi, and you don't find much to talk about, and it gets awkward. One of my sons, that's always the case with us. Sometimes we have these great conversations, sometimes, and I've learned that when it's one of those times where it's not going to turn into a spontaneous conversation, to just sort of make it short, let them know I'm thinking of them, and not try to keep it going, because then the next time I call, he's kind of dreading, here's another long call from Dad.
I think that's smart, Phil. I think it does a couple of things. It makes it takes away the awkwardness of a call that you think should go longer, but it doesn't really have much left to it, and it makes that uncomfortable, and then it raises some concern about the next phone call. So I think that's a great way of handling that.
Yeah. Well, I was happy to hear her comments because it brings up an issue that I think we all have in our relationships. So thanks a lot for your show.
Oh, thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you. Part of this is it's a community strip, they call this. And I think people calling in to try to be helpful to other callers is great. So thank you for doing that.
Okay. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Well, thanks. Thanks for the callers. Thanks to Phil and to Camden. If you want to call, again, the number is 203-336-9756, 203-336-9756. The show is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. So it's really nice when people can offer their support and ideas for other people who are facing some interesting challenges. I think you have to be sensitive to trying not to state what's obvious. Maybe you try to be very innovative in what you might suggest, but also sometimes I think it's really useful to ask for permission. Not everybody wants to necessarily have somebody else tell them what to do to fix something. Sometimes people just like to have the chance to talk it out. Now, in the case with Camden, I think I was able to give her some thoughts that were a little different. It didn't accomplish what she wanted, which was to have the kids call the grandparents. But it might over time, if she if the grandparents are willing to take some initiative around this. So perhaps it happens that way. And if not, you know what? It doesn't always have to work out the way you think it needs to work out, especially when you got so much going right for you in a relationship. You don't want to jeopardize it. If you don't have to around confrontational things that just aren't what your kids want, even though you think it's the right thing for them. Challenges abound for all of us. The nice thing about this emotion roadmap is there's so many opportunities for all of us to practice. We have so many emotionally challenging things in our lives. Well, I have something I wanted to ask you. Now, maybe you can tell me about this. You know, we have a lot of partisanship. You've heard me talk about this before in many different ways, not just in politics, but in multiple ways. We have it around critical race theory, around sexual gender. Those are hot topics. Abortion's a hot topic. We have multiple places where we have very, very deep opinions that are different than other people's opinions. Some of those other people sometimes are very good friends of ours, and yet how can they think so differently than us? Well, anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about some strategies that I've heard about that I'd like to encourage, that I'd like to try to do on the phone with all of you today. And one of them is this. It involves thinking about what it feels like to be included, what it feels like to be part of a group that you really want to be a part of. Have you ever in your life that you can recall had a moment in time which was very special to you where you were hoping to be part of a group? Now, maybe it was getting into the college of your choice. Maybe it was getting into a band where you got to be a lead guitar or a vocalist or a drummer. Maybe it was a chance to play on a team of some kind, a debate team or a sports team. But it was something, or a group of friends that you just wanted to hang with, and somebody invited you in and you got to be part of that crowd. If you could call the show and just share what that was like for you, a little bit about your story and how it felt. I just want to talk about the power of inclusion, what it feels like when you include others. I'd like you to have a chance to talk about that. And then, if we have time, I'd like to talk also about a time maybe when you didn't get included. You know, a time when you were really hopeful something was going to happen for you, but it didn't. They didn't pick you for the team. You didn't get asked to be a part of the group. And what that felt like. That's tougher. So I'd like to start with the positive if you can, but maybe if the other one rings true for you, give me a call about that. Anyway, the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. So, if you could give me a call about some time in your life, recent times, a long time ago, it doesn't matter, just a time when it was really important for you to be included in a group, a team, a class, a school, a camp, or something where you did get picked and it was special and it felt special. If you could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great. Again, the number is 203-336-9756. I hope even if you're not calling that you're at least thinking about things like this, because it brings up some warm feelings for you, some special feelings. So I'd like to see if we can go down this road and see if we can encourage people to call in that weren't thinking about calling because they didn't have problems, but maybe you got triggered a little bit in a good way about wanting to share a story about a time when you did get picked for something special and how it made you feel. If we could capture a few of those, that'd be great. So again, the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll give it a minute. I'll wait. Because maybe people are just trying to think about, well, if I call, I want to be sure I know what I'm saying. I'll give you a second or two to think about it. All right, so people aren't jumping online right now to make that call. I'll give you the number again, 203-336-9756. Here's another one I asked last week, and maybe I get some help for this. This is a tougher one. So again, the one I'd really like, if you can think of it, is a time you were included or a time that you didn't get picked and what those experiences felt like. Maybe you can share both if you got a couple, one of each. Be neat to kind of do that if you could. 203-336-9756. All right. Something else that I wanted to ask about. I didn't get any calls last week. May not this week because this is kind of tough. So one of the clients I'm working with is somebody who's involved with emotional intelligence in a strategic way. And she wanted to talk to me about the difference of being kind of a problem solver, manager versus a strategic leader. Sometimes in organizational life, you're doing a great job. You're recognized at your company as someone that is quick to respond to any opportunity or problem that arises with fast, thoughtful, positive, insightful suggestions for what to do about it. And you're good at firefighting, they call that, and you're great at it. And sometimes the reward for that is to be promoted to a higher level in an organization where you're asked to look at the problems that are potentially going to be coming in the months or years ahead. And you're asked to think strategically about problems and opportunities that no one else is really thinking about, and to try to address them proactively. And that's called strategy and strategic thinking. And I find that a lot of people who get promoted into roles that are higher level, that are asked to engage in strategic thinking, get in the office on that first day in the new role with new responsibilities, and they're delighted and thankful and appreciative for being promoted and put in the spot. And then they ask themselves, okay, what do I do today? How do I start to think about strategy? What are the problems that are likely to be encountered in the weeks or months or years ahead that I can proactively use my problem-solving skills in a strategic sense instead of just fighting fires on a daily basis? Anybody have some experience with that? Again, I know I have very thoughtful listeners, really smart people who listen to the show. And my guess is some of you have been in these roles and have figured it out. And if you have, and if you could share that, I'd love to have you address that with me on the phone, because I think a lot of people get put in these spots and they feel uncomfortable. They feel challenged, uncertain, doubtful about what to do. And since the show's all about changing feelings in a positive way, if you've got some experience along those lines, we need to talk with you about that. So several opportunities to call. The number is 203-336-9756. First, if you just got something you want to talk to me about, anything really, that you'd like to ask me about and to get some help with the roadmap, that's the first priority. Here we go. Thanks. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hey, what's going on? This is Richie from Long Island.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. This is a band story more than an individual story, but along the lines of we're trying to get on a benefit show that I'd attended and wanted the band to be on for several years. We tried getting on the one year. They turned us down because we were brand new. We didn't have enough video stuff online. So I spent the next year, having stuff recorded and constantly sending it to the person in charge. And lo and behold, a year later, we get a call and we get to play.
How did it feel when you got the call?
Oh, dude, amazing. I can't doing cartwheels, Yeah, really good, because it was something that was very important to me, and I wasn't sure it was going to happen, and it ended up being as fun as one would think. And then the next year, they invited us back again, so that was fantastic.
Oh, so that's a great story. Thanks, Richard. How did it feel when you first got turned down?
like every other situation, not very good,
Yeah.
of course. Disappointing. I don't always do this, but a lot of times in defeat, you try and, it can fuel the fire, tackling fuel.
One of the nice things about your story, Richard, is, and by the way, I do see I've got another caller, and I'll take that in a minute if you can wait. Thanks. But one of the things that's neat about your story, Richard, is that you didn't quit on it. You didn't fail because you didn't stop trying. You realized that there was some things you could do to make it happen, and it was important enough for you. Sounds like a lot of work that you did to make that happen.
Yeah, it's passion.
Yeah.
So I know you have another call. I'll let you go. Can I give you the band name?
Sure.
Okay, the band was Monsoon Groove. We were together for 5 years. COVID kind of killed it, I guess, but none of the members, just the band. But anyway, nice talking to you, and rock on.
Thanks a lot, Richard. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
All right, take care.
Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
How we doing? I'm called Anonymous. How are you?
Okay, I'm sorry. You want to be anonymous? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm
that's fine.
speaking.
That's fine.
I enjoy listening to your show when I do catch it. I'm just sharing from a athlete standpoint. I played a lot of college soccer as well as tennis in my life at like a somewhat of a high level. I mean, as a kid, I played from a grassroots tennis camps.
Yep.
And then I went on to get selected for the excellence team, which was a little program that would play in between the matches of like the Volvo and the Pilot Pen back in the day.
Okay.
So it was a great opportunity, and it took like lots of challenges and things that you get thrown your way, and you just have to learn to deal with. But it's part of being in those type of situations, and being an athlete, that type of stuff brought me those type of opportunities. So outside of that, I played a lot of high level soccer, and for me, I was always competing at a young age, so it was just like something that was firsthand nature for me. At a point where I got to a soccer level, and I was missing, I wasn't making the tryouts anymore, and for me, I was in high school at that point, so that was it was deep at a major point in my life, so it was a challenge for me.
So it sounds like over the years you had a lot of opportunities where you actually were talented and worked hard enough, I suppose, to get selected for key roles in different kinds of athletic games. I don't know if there were leagues, but it sounds like you had a number of chances to do award-winning things in your life.
Correct.
Okay, so did you? I'm sure you had moments where sometimes you got in and got the award, and sometimes you didn't. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in feelings and those kind of cases?
Well, yeah, I think that's more what I was getting to. Also, is like at a point of, when you're in high school and you're getting to a point where you're going to college, and you no longer are making that last tryout where you need to make it. It's kind of like it has a big effect on you, in terms of like how you move and just, for me, it did have a big effect on me. And I think that's like a major thing that I don't know if people understand, like, and that was something I had to go through, and I'm still dealing with, but like also learning how to, still have a level of excellence, and still want the best,
So are you doing athletics still today, or is this something that was in the past?
When you compete at a certain level, you don't it's not the same. So I choose not to as much as, and that's as of recently. The COVID kind of slowed things down. Yep. But, I choose to, it's more of like dealing with things day to day. That's more, more of my how I approach the challenge in life now. So if it's teaching people how to, because sports is a lot of adversity, it's a lot of, challenges that you can't just get walking around without, participating in that part of life.
Well, that's interesting. So I guess one of the things that you've learned over your time of doing this is that you're not going to get every award, but it was worth it to you to fight for all the ones you did get?
Absolutely. I think part of my training, I played as a goalkeeper. My coaches would train me in some of the worst conditioning and, early in the morning. We'd be the first ones up training. Sometimes you throw up on yourself. I train with some of the best. So I think that's some of the challenges that they were saying that, they prepare you in life for. So I think that's one of the pluses I give to the game. But, at the same time, challenges in life, that I deal with day to day, I give thanks to that,
Well, one of the things I actually played varsity soccer myself in high school, and we had a very competitive team, and it was a wonderful experience, and I was really thrilled to be part of it and to be picked for it. It was a chance to be on something that pushed you in ways that you didn't know you could be pushed, and got to play at a potential that you didn't know you could realize. And the coach was tough. It wasn't about I was a special player on his team. There's a lot of special players on his team, but he just really pushed all of us to give us to be part of something very special where everybody gave whatever they could to it because they so wanted to be part of this team. What a great feeling.
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you this one story. We had a trip tournament out in Minnesota, and we were probably about 16, 17 at that point, but we were out past our curfew doing what, young adolescents do, and the parents come back, and the coach catches us out, and we're out of luck at this point. We got games in the morning first thing. My teammates are from all over the state, so at this point, we're all about 20 deep into trouble. And I tell you, our coach had us running stairs at 2 a.m. for, I believe, a half an hour. And if it wasn't an hour, it was a half an hour. I'll give him a half an hour just to say it felt like an hour. And then before we could go to sleep, he goes, and I want everybody to do 150 push-ups. So that took about another hour and a half because of me. I probably finished the last one out of everybody. But that was a lesson in itself. And I think, in life, when you do things that, aren't the right decisions and, you know better and things happen, right now is, do people want to be, want to get their end of the deal? And I feel like nowadays people are changing and they don't, they don't accept that part of it. As a team, we took it and we all learned from it. And I think that, nowadays people aren't holding others, responsible for their end of, I guess, being responsible for, what they're, you get what I'm trying to say?
I do. You were taught to take accountability for your actions, exactly. and it was a lesson that stayed with you for quite some time to the point that you're telling it today.
Right. And I that's part of it. That's for me. That's always been in training, and that's always been a part of the game as well. So respect, and I appreciate everybody. Have a beautiful day today, and I'm glad I was able to get through.
Thanks a lot for calling, Shane. I'm sorry. You meant to. My apologies. Anyway, thanks a lot for calling. I really appreciate the call. It was great to talk to you. Thanks for sharing some of your stories. I think they resonated with me, and I'm sure with lots of other people. Thanks for being part of our community. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Well, so we got a little bit of time left. If anybody else wants to call, the number is 203-336-9756. So we have several different callers that have called in, and I want to thank everybody who's called today, starting with Camden and Phil and Richard and Anonymous. Apologize for that. So anyway, again, 203-336-9756. So what does it feel like to be included and not included? One of the things that, I guess I'll tell you this story. I've mentioned it, I think, once before. So I'm going to be a speaker at a big company that hired me to come in and talk to them about inclusion and other things, but inclusion is one of the topics. And one of the things that I've done and experienced and heard about is that there are times when you ask people to talk about a time they were included and how powerful and how meaningful and how attractive it is to be included. But there are also the times sometimes when we're shut out, when we didn't get picked, when we didn't make the team, when something happened that didn't work out the way we wanted. I tried to play football when I was first in college, my freshman year of college. I was a very good athlete. I was in really good shape. But the team, my high school team, didn't exist. There was no football where I came from. Someone had broken a neck and died, I guess, some 20 years before I went to high school in the town I grew up in, and they had decided they didn't want to have football anymore. They actually, since then, have put a football team back in. But because of that, our team in the wintertime had a great soccer team because all the best athletes weren't split between football and soccer. There was no football. It was basketball too, but there was soccer. And a lot of the best athletes landed up on the soccer team. So we had a great soccer team, and I shared that with you a moment ago. But I loved the game of football. I always loved that game. And we had some leagues, club leagues that formed in the community over the years, and I played, and I was good. I was really good. But when I got to compete at a level in college with athletes that were every bit as talented as I was, at least most of them, I guess, some more talented. Maybe I was a little more talented than a few, perhaps, at least potentially. But, I hadn't played. And all of those other people had played for 4 years on their high school teams. And some came in with scholarships. And so I was competing against those people. And while I think I gave a pretty good accounting of myself, there's just too much I didn't know and hadn't experienced. And I didn't make it. And I was sad. I was upset and sad that this was something that I had dreamed about. I thought maybe, just maybe, my athleticism, my speed, my quickness. I was really fast as a runner, and I was elusive. I mean, I was a pretty good athlete, but again, without any of the training that the others had, I just really didn't have much of a chance, and I didn't make it. And I was, again, you can hear it in my voice, I was disappointed that didn't happen. Really disappointed. And so I know what it feels like to be disappointed when you want something and what it feels like when you get something, what a difference it makes. So one of the people I'm friendly with in an organization that looks at emotional intelligence from a research perspective and a practice perspective, that is like some of the smartest people in the world attend this conference twice a year, and I'm lucky enough to be included in it. And one of the fellows was talking one time about how he had been hired, his company had been hired by a very large engineering firm to come in and do a diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility intervention. A lot of companies are doing that these days. And one of the things they had told his company was, you got the bid. You by far had the best materials and the best presentation, and we want to work with you. And we're good at the top, and we would like to know what your plans are at the levels below us to bring in and implement a plan to teach everybody about what you shared with us in your presentation. So it was a case where the senior team decided they didn't need an intervention. They just got the presentation. They knew it was going to be talked about and addressed and taught, and they thought that was all they needed. Now, lots of times, people in my world as consultants know that lots of times the senior people are just as needy. They just don't like to admit it. Or they don't know that they need it. But this fellow was very smart about what he did. He said, you know what? I'd like to come in and I'd like to work with you individually before we tell you when we're going to get started, because a couple of things we would like to talk to you individually about. And I said, okay, well, that's all right. We get that done a couple of weeks, sure. So they came in and they interviewed each of the individual senior team leaders. And in those interviews, they asked the question that I asked on the radio show this morning, which was, hey, can you tell me about a time when you were included in something important to you? And of course, in a one-on-one setting with just the person talking to them, they said, sure. And they started to think about different times in their life that they had been included in very meaningful activities or groups. And they shared those stories. And they asked the person at the end of that, how are you feeling? Now that I talked to you about that, and you remembered and recalled some of these special times in your life, they said, I feel great. I feel it was wonderful. It's so amazing to be included. Well, good. Okay, I got one other question for you. This one's a little tougher, which was a time you were excluded. You didn't get picked. You didn't get to make the team. You weren't part of the organization. You didn't get the promotion. Maybe you got asked out even, you know. How did that experience happen? And what did you feel when you went through that? Now, of course, that's a much more depressing kind of scenario, right? It's hard to talk about things that happened, even when they're a long time ago, that didn't work out the way that you had hoped. Because you recall the moments when you were in those settings and you didn't get picked and it didn't happen the way you were hoping. Well, needless to say, at the end of all of this, they came together and they realized when they all got back together how powerful it was for everybody to feel included and how difficult when you weren't feeling included. And maybe you were on the outside feeling excluded. And they decided as a company, you know what? We want everybody in our company to always feel included. We want no one to feel excluded. Everybody needs to feel like they belong. And that's what I'll leave you with until next time. Hope you have a great week. Hope you understand how important it is to feel included. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening. It's Chuck Wolf.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.